Got it.
Councilmember Reed,
Here.
Kimberly Walton, Lashandra Rayfield, Katie McFadden,
Here.
Omar Salem,
Here.
Alejandra Ibanez,
Here.
Darlene Cannon,
Here.
Jane Grover,
Here, thank you.
Carla Thomas,
I'm here.
Did you say my name yet? I'm sorry. I can't really hear you well tonight.
sorry, I did say your name and
Okay, I'm here, Kimberly Walton.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It sounds like we have quorum. Is that right, Matt? Okay, well, I believe so. Let us welcome everybody again. Thanks for joining us again. Expressing gratitude for Zoom, even though I know most of us are probably tired of it. It allows us to continue meeting and conducting this important work despite the weather and the way that COVID just continues to linger on. So please, I hope you continue to be safe and well. It sounds like not many folks had an opportunity, or I'm not sure if you got the packet. I wonder if folks need a little bit of time to be able to review the minutes before we take a vote. Who besides myself needs a few minutes to review the minutes before we take a vote? You want to raise your hands if you need at least a good 3 minutes? Anyone? Kimberly? Thank you. I don't feel so lonely, Omar. Okay. It is 6:39. Can we take about 3 minutes to review the minutes? Okay. Thank you all for your patience. And let's take just 3 minutes to review the minutes. Okay, folks. Now that we've given ourselves some time to read the minutes, does anybody have any questions or edits that need to be made to the minutes before I call for a vote? It all looks good.
I will move approval of the minutes then.
You get a second?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor of accepting the minutes as provided, please give your vote.
Aye.
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 Any nays? Questions? Okay, thank you for That unanimous vote of support. The minutes have now been accepted. Yes, Jane.
Madam Chair, I have a proposal on the order of our agenda tonight. And I'm wondering if after approval of our chair and vice chair, if that's our next order of business, that we move up, you may have already thought of this, our discussion with the Environmental Justice Evanston. I see that Mr. Schlickman and Rick Nelson are here. And I know Andy hung on for a long time at our last meeting, and I wondered if we could just move them to the front of our agenda for this meeting.
Does anybody have any problem with that? I don't see any problem with that. Anybody?
No issue.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Okay. Next on the agenda, we actually have public comment. Anybody joining us tonight that would like to share any public comment?
See one hand.
Yes. Eileen, please go ahead.
Hi, folks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Eileen Hogan-Heineman, and I'm the Community Outreach Manager for the Equity Institute at YWCA, and spent lots of time with this committee over its first several years, but have not been around this past year very much. But I just wanted to say that this year YWCA is going to host Stand Against Racism again in a variety of ways. And I would love if we could have a couple of minutes on the agenda next month to really talk that through and flesh that out, so that, because we would appreciate the city's participation, but we're looking for something a little deeper and less performative than just standing out in front of in front of the Civic Center, et cetera. So if I could have a couple of minutes next month on the agenda, I would appreciate that.
Commissioners, any thoughts on that? It seems like a pretty easy ask. Happy to provide Eileen in the YW space to be able to present on the summit. Thoughts, comments? Can we get a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Makes sense to me. Good idea.
Yeah, it
Wonderful.
works for us. And then Eileen, if you have, hope you will come with kind of specific asks so that either this group can ponder if that's
Absolutely.
a way we can kind of work on behalf of, whatever tiny piece of the city we represent, or if there are other things that you need us to take to the rest of the city.
Great.
To kind of ask as a branch, looking out for equitable issues. So
I appreciate that, and we're putting together a packet that I'll share with you as soon as it's with the whole commission, as soon as it's ready, so that you can be thinking about ways that make sense for your various organizations in addition to the city.
Wonderful. And thank you, Commissioner Grover, AKA Jane, for putting the link on the chat for the Stand Against Racism website, where I bet there's plenty of information. So
That's the national, the
Okay.
YWCA's national site for this, and I'm sure our local YWCA, Evanston North Shore, will have its own. Didn't seem updated when I looked, but
okay.
you'll have something for 2022 soon, I'm guessing.
Yes, they've been having some struggles with accessing the national site for us individual agencies. So they're working on that, but we're working on creating our own packet of information.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Eileen. Matt, you'll do us the favor of making sure that it's on the agenda, and when the co-chairs meet for next month, you all can talk more about where it fits on the agenda and connect with Eileen. All right. So if there are no other members from the community present, we can move on to the approval of the chair and vice chair. And so, as was in the minutes.
Hey, Tom, I
Somebody's happy somewhere. That's okay. I want to hear happiness. So as you all read and know, staff is recommending the appointment of Carla Thomas as chair and LaShondra Rayfield as vice chair, as I will be stepping down after tonight. But I will still be around in Evanston. And let me tell you, my 2 teenagers are keeping me busy enough.
I will move approval and nomination of Carla Thomas as and my 8th Ward resident, or one of my bosses, Sandra Rayfield Smith, as co-chairs for the Equity and Empowerment Commission.
Enthusiastic second of your motion. Thank you, Councilmember Reed.
Let's take a vote. All those in support, please say yay or show a thumbs up.
Aye for Grover.
Yay.
Yay.
And aye.
Do I even get to vote for myself? I don't know.
You can get to vote for yourself in this.
Because it's
Any nays?
Evanston and that's how we do things around here.
Any nays? I believe that was a unanimous vote in support. Wonderful. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And welcome LaShondra, who I know is not on the call, but will be joining us and will be already engaged in the work by planning next month's agenda with our chair, Thomas, and with Matt at the city helping out. So thank you all. I will stay, of course, for the remainder of the evening, but so excited that we will have these 2 incredible leaders chairing this commission. All righty. We are moving on to our next agenda item, and thank you for the support, everyone, for moving our discussion regarding the Environmental Equity Planning Investigation Report. Andy Schlickman is back to go into a little more detail about what this investigation and work is about. We've set aside 10 minutes for you, Andy, to be able to speak more on this work, and then we will have about 10 to 15 minutes to do Q&A with Andy. So let me take it away, Andy. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alejandra. First of all, can everybody hear me okay? I'm working with a new computer here, and this is the first Zoom trial I've done with it, so I'm glad that that's the case.
Working good for you.
I'm going to share the screen too. If I can do this correctly. All righty. Does everybody see the first slide up there with the title of the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me back. And first of all, I'd like to just introduce. I think you're all probably familiar with Environmental Justice Evanston. We're an organization that's been around the city for a number of years. We're a relatively small but active group. The co-chairs of EJ Evanston are Janet Alexander Davis and Rick Nelson. Rick is here on the call. Janet is trying to get in. She's run into some technical difficulties, and I'm hoping she can still join us, but I'm not optimistic at this point. And in addition to myself, we have 4 other members, active members of the group. So like I said, we're a relatively small group, but we hope we're accomplishing a lot, even despite our small numbers. As we sort of finished up the last time, I clearly want to make the point again that, EJE wants to work with the Equity Empowerment Commission. We want to avoid duplicating effort and advancing the goals of each group, and really try to create as many, synergies between the 2 organizations as we can. It was very interesting to be on the last discussion to hear about the community equity survey, the equity review scorecard, and it became apparent those either overlap or potentially overlap with some of the work that we're doing and that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. To promote better coordination and communication, not that there hasn't been bad, but to really make sure it's as good as possible, we would like to suggest that maybe each organization identify a liaison for going forward, just so we don't have to, talk in a group like this and all the time at the meetings, I've offered to act as the liaison for Environmental Justice Evanston, and we'd be, welcome to have somebody from your organization serve as a liaison too. Let me get into the environmental equity investigation. The objective really here is to move forward and continue to implement the environmental justice resolution that the city adopted back in September 2020. And it's hard to believe that, it was almost a year and a half ago. What it would involve is really a comprehensive investigation into the nature, extent, and causes of environmental justice in Evanston, along with developing a set of recommendations for mitigating those injustices. What we are proposing to do this is setting up an investigation team that would consist of approximately 15 members. We would expect that they would represent as much as possible a cross-section of the Evanston community, along with some key people from city staff who would be on the team. Finally, we envision that one person each from this organization, Equity Environment Commission. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to. Janet was trying to reach me on the other line. Maybe Rick, maybe you could follow up with Janet,
Sure.
so you don't have to interrupt the presentation too much. And that there'd be one person from this group, the Equity Empowerment Commission, one person from the Evanston Environmental Board, and one person from our organization, Environmental Justice Evanston, who would serve on the team. And this is really in keeping with what was provided, I think, in the resolution. I think everybody was provided with a copy of the resolution at the last meeting, but the resolution makes it very clear that these three organizations that I just mentioned should be very much involved in the implementation of the work of the resolution. This environmental investigation team or environmental justice investigation team would consist basically of two groups. We envision there being an investigative group that would really sort of lead the investigation and ensure the work is done in a prompt and effective manner. And they would also probably take the lead on doing the initial drafts of any documents that come out of this work, especially the final report. And the second group would be a community group, which would lead the public engagement effort. And I'm switching to the next slide now. Public engagement in our minds, and is really required by the Environmental Justice Resolution, would be a very robust public engagement program. We would expect it would involve participation from all quarters of the city, that it would be proactive in the sense that the investigation team, and especially the community group, would go out and seek potential interested parties in the community and get as much helpful information as we could from them. And we also want to emphasize that a large part of the public engagement effort really should involve face-to-face communications. There's nothing wrong with surveys. There's nothing wrong with online ways of obtaining information, but we think in this particular case, having as many face-to-face efforts as possible would be very helpful. We are proposing that a facilitator investigator be hired by the city to assist with this work. We're all a bunch of volunteers. We have a real interest in environmental justice, but we are not experts in conducting this type of investigation. So we were hopeful that a facilitator investigator could be hired. And we're hoping that ARPA funding would be available to do this. We have made a request through the Evanston Environmental Board for ARPA funds that is sitting before the City Council right now. And we're hoping that will move forward and our request will be granted. But let me say, at least from our perspective, Environmental Justice Evanston, we are prepared to continue with working people to move this forward, even if we don't get the ARPA funding. And if need be, we would do our best to try to find a volunteer or a group of volunteers that could serve the same role as an experienced facilitator investigator. That's just something we'll have to work through as we move forward. Another element of the investigation would be what we call a mapping tool. And this is actually specifically required by one of the provisions of the environmental justice resolution. I think it may be called a GIS mapping effort, fancy name, I guess, for a mapping tool on a computer. We have been working with the city, some city staff, and also people at Northwestern University to begin building this mapping tool. And once, as it's being developed, and it may be something that will continue to be tinkered with throughout this whole effort, we would expect it would show the relationship between key environmental indicators and neighborhoods in the city. So in addition to collecting information from talking to people in the public engagement effort, we would have a map too that would inform the work that the investigation team is doing and be available to the community throughout, and hopefully even afterwards, after the work is done. It's great. We were actually able to get a grant from Northwestern to get some of their people to help with this work, and that's been a big step forward for us. The culmination of this would be a report and recommendation from the investigation team that would, summarize the findings and make, specific and concrete recommendations to the city about steps they could and should take to mitigate environmental injustices. And, we're very much aware that in addition to our work, there's the work of the Equity Empowerment Commission and in similar issues in similar areas. And also the CARP implementation effort is focusing on resiliency in the context of their work, which also, folds into and overlaps somewhat with the issue of environmental justice. So, we clearly expect that going down the road, we would be, as we prepare these recommendations and as they're finalized, that an effort would be made to coordinate with these other efforts that are going on in the city. So our timetable is, basically we hope to have this all done in the next 2 years. We're proposing to the city that the investigation begin in July of this year. We think the duration of the investigation would be, 12 to 18 months. And that would take us, I think, probably to the end of 2023. Now, we have briefed city officials about these efforts in a number of instances and settings over the last 6 months. Most recently, we had a call with Mayor Biss, acting city manager Gandersky, the new sustainability and resilience coordinator Kara Pratt, and Dave Stonebeck, the director of public works, and outlined for them what we're thinking. We actually provided them with 3 documents that set forth in a little bit more detail what we're talking about here today. Just last week, we received a response from them that we believe was generally fairly positive, and we expect we're going to be having a call with them in March to discuss the next steps for moving this forward. And we have advised them that one of the key steps in this process is working closely with the commission and other organizations at the city, such as the Environment Board, that have an interest in this. Very quickly, a couple other things that EJ is doing. We've been conducting listening sessions with residents, primarily in some of the minority Black neighborhoods here in Evanston. And the reason we're doing this is, we wanted to, before we, really jumped into this investigation, learn from some of the people in the community what their concerns are as far as environmental justice issues go. And we thought that would be helpful in terms of, guiding the continuing planning for this investigation. It's really, in a sense, to sort of, I guess, in a way, ground truth the work that we're doing. And we've had 3 of those sessions so far. Our 4th and last one will be next week. And we've learned a lot of interesting information that's going to be very helpful for us. And the last thing we've worked on is something we call the Playbook, an environmental justice playbook that is basically a step-to-step guide for addressing environmental complaints that residents of the community have. And it sets out fairly detailed guidelines for how you would go about investigating these issues and reporting them the proper way. It would have been too long to include these slides here. It's about a 4 or 5 page document, but I will make sure that a copy of it gets to the right person so it can be distributed to all the commissioners after this call. So that's the end of my presentation. Sorry, I went a couple minutes over. It looks like about 11 and a half minutes here, but Just one, Rick, do you have anything to add at this point, or should we just go right into the question and answer session?
You know, it seems like time is at a premium here, so I would actually just suggest we go into the question and answer session. I think you pretty much covered everything that we wanted to cover.
Okay, we'll turn it back to you, Alejandra.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. All right, commissioners. I've got a question or two, but want to see if anybody else has questions or comments for Andy and his colleagues.
Madam Chair, I have a couple comments first. Thanks, Andy and Rick and Hold, EJ, Criminal Justice Evanston for this. It's actually quite exciting. I think there are a lot of opportunities for collaboration here. I'm really interested in the data and the mapping tool and the development of indicators that I think are going to be useful to the Equity and Empowerment Commission as well. I'm sure there are indicators that are kind of environment specific, like access to parks or the presence of lead pipes by neighborhood, by street, by house. But I would be interested in following the development of your indicators and what data you'll be looking at, because I'm thinking we can piggyback on a lot of that work for how we would approach everything from public engagement or the impact of the policies and programs that we're looking to study too. So, and that you've already gotten an opportunity with Northwestern to bring some of their resources to bear on this is great.
Thanks, Jane. And, you know, unfortunately, Jerry Garl, who some of you may know, who's also on the Environment Board, has been the leader of our sort of sub-team working on that mapping project. And I wish she was here to share with you a little bit more detail. But, you know, at a very high level, there are probably 5 or 6 indicators that we have been preliminarily focusing on. And I believe it includes lead pipes. It also, you know, addresses issues like noise, air pollution, some health concerns. None of that is by any means final. And let me make an offer, Jane, to have Jerry either prepare something that we can follow up with you on that would show you at a high level where that work is at this time.
Great, please. And you know, I work for a regional planning agency and they're very much in the data business. And if we can be of assistance at all, giving you access to our indicators that the agency looks at region-wide, or to help you with the data to support it, we can drill down to census tracts and things like that. And I can connect to some of our data people to help with that, if that would be valuable.
That's great. And that's you're speaking the language. So
Yeah.
that sounds good.
It's not my language, I'm making it up, but I know other people who know this. Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. Kimberly, I see your hands up.
Yep. Thank you for recognizing me, and thank you for the presentation. Oh, sorry, I have the wrong background up tonight, so just ignore that. One of my other organizations. But I just wanted to ask, I think what you're proposing, kind of along with what Jane was mentioning, is really interesting. And I was wondering if you might consider, like, as you're, you know, analyzing the data and sort of looking at some of those indicators, you know, as far as number of lead pipes or, you know, other things you might consider, if you would be interested in exploring how that might link to what's out there publicly as far as disease prevalence and rates of like obesity or rates of asthma, other sort of general like health indicators. In my work, Blue Cross Blue Shield, we obviously have more data on, you know, on exactly what treatments and prescriptions and things people are filling, but we often try to look at a population level and look at like zip codes or to find certain like clusters, or, you know, see if there's anything that might give us some indication in terms of a specific need or a specific area of focus from a health systems perspective. And I was just wondering if you might be interested in seeing where it may take you with what you're collecting, and knowing that oftentimes things like pollution and lead pipes and other elements of environmental injustice, right, are often appearing in the same communities where you have higher rates of disease prevalence. So just something I was wondering if you all had considered or might be open to sort of including in your analysis.
I think the answer is yes, yes, and yes. If I got everything right there, we are definitely interested in pursuing health issues. We think that's probably a fairly high priority. And I think we'd be, just as with Jane, we'd be interested in following up with you and you know, what your organization that you just mentioned could offer us in that regard. I do have to say, though, that in addition to making this a useful tool for the investigation, we want to make it a useful tool for the community. And we do know that there are loads and loads and loads of information out there. So I think what would be really helpful input from this commission and from people who are familiar and interested in this is what they think the most important indicators are, what the really key indicators on there that we should be focusing on. And definitely, you know, health indicators or a set of health indicators are some we're very interested in. So we will follow up with you. We will be reporting back to Jerry and the team on this, and one way or another, we'll get in touch with you.
All right, thanks.
Just real quickly, one thing I would add to that is with a tool like this, there can always be like a version 1, a version 2, a version 3. Lots of times people think everything has to go in this tool, you know, from day one. But I think that there will be over time, there'll be a core set of data layers that will be there from the start. And then over time, you know, things can also always be added to this tool. So, you know, something just to keep in mind, because there's going to be a lot of interest from a lot of people as far as specific things that they want to see. But, you know, the type of input that you're providing tonight is great input. And I'm sure we will follow up with both you and Jane to get more input in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Wonderful. Any other questions? I know, Andy and Rick, I've got 2 questions, well, maybe one question and then just some comments. How much do you think it'll cost to pull this off? And I know that you said you've applied for some ARPA money. You know, how much will it cost? And you know, if you know, I don't know how much you've applied for ARPA dollars, but what will it take to run this? And you know, wondering how else we can help you. I mean, we don't have much of a budget ourselves, but want to make sure that we support that this happens, and wondering what you're thinking. And then my other question is about engaging engaging those that are hard to engage or that have historically not been engaged. But tell us, you know, how much will it take to pull this off?
Well, let's talk about the facilitator investigator. I guess you could also say the consultant, but we think it take $150,000 over the 2 years to hire an investigator that would serve the role that we're looking for, who would really, you know, act as one of the main cogs in the investigation. You would work with both groups on the investigation team to move their work forward, both the investigation part of the work and the community engagement, which of course are related anyway. You know, that's based not on any formal requests or offers or proposals. That's based on the experience that some of us, you know, in environmental justice Evanston have had in our prior lives, you know, working with consultants on projects of this magnitude. So that's $150,000 over 2 years. After that, Alejandra, I think we're really hopeful that, you know, most of the costs will be covered by the city, and not necessarily in the way of out-of-pocket costs, but through services they can provide to us, you know, in terms of, you know, mailing things, you know, providing some staff support to organize things that need to be organized. Even before the investigation gets started, there'll have to be an effort to, you know, get the investigation team set up and find interesting people who are willing to, you know, serve on the investigation team. And you know, we have part of our proposals to the city right now are a plan and a program and a schedule for doing that, which, you know, shouldn't, and Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, shouldn't involve really the need for any cash outlays. We just need some people power and some help from the city. And like I said, the response so far has been generally good. I do think the city's a little bit concerned about, what this may mean for their staff over the long run, but we've got some thoughts as to how we can try to share the work with them to take some of the burden off the city. And it may very well be that, as we move into this, getting some assistance from, the people on this call at the commission, people from the Environment Board will be, useful and helpful in that regard. So, Rick, anything more to add at that point?
The one additional area would be the GIS mapping tool itself. So we actually have already interacted with the person with the city who is the GIS mapping expert. The city has a platform that, they've already paid for, it already exists, and we would actually build this sitting on top of that platform. So we worked with someone at the city. We actually, at this point in time, have I guess what it would be a relatively primitive functional prototype that can actually put layers up on the screen. We have some initial layers defined, but it's all somewhat preliminary at this point in time. But we kind of got enough into the detail of the use of that product that the costs associated with that would probably be minimal because the pieces are already there. If there were costs associated with acquiring any specific data layers, that might be something that would be additional cost. But so far, it looks like most of what we need is going to be there with the city already.
That's great to hear, because that'll be in kind and something that the city and the community would benefit from anyways.
And
I
what
was
was
just
the second question? You had, I believe you had a second question.
Yeah. And I was just also going to comment, and you may not need this, but as a graduate of the College of Urban Planning, I know that, there's a lot of very capable graduate students over there who geek out on GIS and are probably looking for some practical experience. So happy to make that connection. My second is more of a thought, and how we can be thought partners as the Equity and Empowerment Commission about how to engage, predominantly our communities of color, right, who disproportionately are impacted by environmental injustice. I try not to use the word minority since we are not a minority, but just to say, happy to be of assistance. I will no longer be sitting on the commission, but obviously this is the commission that can be thought partners in engaging to communities directly impacted, but are typically not part or not considered thought partners. And so again, just make sure you continue to lean on this commission and folks who are in the community and have those strong, trusting partnerships with various communities. I'm assuming you're also thinking about how to make how to make this project accessible to those who may not be English speakers, who maybe have, some challenges in being able to be physically able to participate in anything outdoors. But again, just lean on this commission, and for those folks that have trusting relationships in the community that we really need to engage, not just as recipients, but as thought partners and leaders.
Thank you. We will do that. And I see Janet made it on.
Hello, everyone.
Janet Alexander Davis.
Ooh, what a lesson. If I didn't have a techie husband, I'd be in trouble. I'm Janet Alexander Davis, and I'm a co-chair with Rick of this wonderful organization. So thank you so much for allowing me just to say that.
We're glad you made it, Janet.
And your comments about, I worked in the disabled people that use wheelchairs for mobility over the Rainbow Association. I was the director of operations for 7 years. So that is definitely on my radar to connect with people there and other places, because I'm born and raised in Evanston, been here 78 years. So I know a few things, and I know a few people that we need to also, contact. So thank you so much for listening tonight.
Yeah.
Hi, Treasure. Yes. thank you all for joining, and please reach out. I'd love to. I know I've met with Jerry Garl already, but I'd love to stay in contact with this group, and however I can support from the council, happy to, of course, do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I want to thank our colleagues from our environmental justice work organization. We're excited about the work that you and the collective us will be moving together. We are now at 7:17, so great use of time. I want to now pass it on
Oh,
to-
Madam Chair, one maybe quick thing.
Yes, of course.
I heard in Andy's presentation that they had proposed the idea of a liaison, and I'd be happy to play that role if you'll have me. If there's not anyone else who wants to fill it, I'd be happy to help with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks for that, Katie. I'm glad that you lifted it up because I would hate to leave this meeting without making sure that we made that connection. So
That'd be great.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Okay, I think now, are there any questions or comments before we move on and thank the team for joining us? Andy?
Alejandra, I told Rick and Janet they're welcome to drop off at this point, but I'll stay on.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Go
Thank you
on.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back to the agenda. So thank you everybody for your engagement and your patience. I know we were going to get an update on the on our community equity survey. And I wonder, Carla, were you going to lead this discussion? I know you're multitasking and driving.
Yeah, it's more Matthew. There's one thing Matthew needs from us, which is a snippet of what's going to go out in the emails that go from the mayor and the council folks. But we do have an approved version of the survey, and I think if you want to give people a link of that both in English and Spanish, so that's kind of ready to I would say approve tonight, but it's less about going back in the weeds. It's more about the formatting in this new system. It's in the SurveyMonkey, as well as we do have. I'm going to combine this point with the next point because it's all intertwined. We are going to kind of ask for everybody to go into the agenda. There should be a link there to the brainstorming session that we started a brainstorm of who else do we want to utilize within our community in a more grassroots method to disseminate this this survey. So Matthew will be working with all the city channels, working with all the folks to get it out in their newsletter, working with the mayor and wherever else places that they send it through. We will be responsible, me, LaShondra, and Darlene will be responsible for sending that to sort of the other grassroots, like the other individuals in the community. And so what we're trying to do in that document is break it out to what are the groups that we want to make sure that we get voice from, that often those emails just sent by the mayor or whoever don't often reach. And then who within our community kind of could help us kind of reach those folks. So the point here is that, like, if you look under the African American grouping, or if we have Black, they're African American. I think under there someone had put Reverend Neighbors, and so the whole point is that then we will be sending an email to Reverend Neighbors explaining what the survey is about, explaining that we are specifically interested in hearing the voice of the Black community, and asking him to send to his network in whatever form he's comfortable, kind of impressing upon them the importance of answering the survey. So if there are other, I would like everybody to we're going to take 5 minutes now. I will not be doing it while driving, but I have spent a good bit of time going through there as well. Kind of run down that list, take 5 minutes, and any person that you know, if you know the name and you don't have the contact information, Evanston's small enough, I'll find the contact information. If you have the contact information in your email now, please just take it out of your email and drop it on there. That's less work for us to do in the final end. But this is our attempt to make sure that we're not just saying we want to hear from people with disabilities. We're not just saying we want to hear from the Asian community, that we're actually going out of our way to this community. If
Okay,
anybody's having trouble finding the link or anything like that, just kind of let the group know.
right. So it's been provided in the chat, everybody. I'm actually in there right now. So if you all can take the next few minutes, the next 4 or 5 minutes, and go in there. I see some names, not a whole lot, very few contacts. So if you can populate that now, or at least open it up so you can populate it over the next day, weekend, that would be very helpful. So let's give you another 4 minutes to review. Let me just share, Carla and Matt, I looked at the Spanish. It actually looks very strong. There's one acronym BIPOC that we will have to translate, because that does not I don't think a Spanish speaker would know what BIPOC stands for. Happy to help fix that acronym. And I might even recommend.
I have some suggestions out. I'm on my phone right now, but I will pull this spreadsheet up. Just sent the link to myself a little later, but I do have some suggestions on reaching the Black community as well as the 5th ward.
Right. So Kimberly, if you can go ahead and populate what you can here, or go ahead and send a direct email
to me,
to Carla.
Yeah, if anybody's having issues with the Excel spreadsheet, or they later on forget where it is or whatever, and you think of somebody, just email me. I'll be like helping coordinate the sending it out to the different folks. So even if you think about it a week from now, just send me an email. I will get it out.
Okay. Are you all able to edit? I have it open on my computer, but I can't edit it. Is anybody else running into that, or is it just me?
I'm able to edit it.
Okay, let me try. Let me just try again. All right. If not, I'll email you, Carla.
Yeah, I just made an edit right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like it's an open access document.
Yeah, when I click in the thing, it doesn't do anything. All right, I'll figure it out. Thanks.
Now, Carla and Matt, I can make edits directly to now the document in Spanish. Would you like me to just make those edits in the document, or do they need to be sent in another way?
If you're comfortable and happy to make those edits in the document, then that
Okay,
will be perfectly
wonderful. Okay, folks. Any other comments and questions? Good. It sounds like everybody is getting their Google pens and making edits or additions. So thank you for that. Okay, what did I do with the agenda? Sorry, folks, this is what happens when you have way too many things open on your laptop. There we go. Matt, I see one more thing under discussion on our agenda, this concept of drafting an ordinance. Can you tell us a little bit more? I'm not
I
familiar.
could speak to that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carla.
So towards the end of our meeting last month, as we were sharing what was done so far on the scorecard, so the equity scorecard, Lashandra made a very good point that without some teeth, right, we can make the most perfect, not saying that we will make the perfect, but we could make the most perfect scorecard. But if there is nothing mandating the city to get to the point where they use it themselves, which is ideal, or pay attention to when we score things, which is kind of how it's set up now, because I feel like that's we can control ourselves and we have power to fill it out, whereas we don't necessarily have power to mandate that all through the city they fill it out as they're creating policy changes or initiatives. That we could make the most perfect document, but it's not getting us anywhere. And that we need to be pushing on the city more to get them to sort of fully, more formally adopt this, which would mean ordinance of some sort that goes before city council, the city council then adopts, and then we can say, well, you adopted this, you should be using it, or at least paying attention when it's used, or whatever point we can get to agreement on. And so we were hoping that as we have a small group of Lashandra, Darlene, and I who are working towards finalizing the scorecard, that we could have another group, preferably, when I say preferably, like, somebody who's willing to take it on, but also somebody who's familiar with I don't want to say the language of ordinance. It's not like you have to write a certain way exactly, but Devon, you might be able to help me better with this, but I have to.
I'll volunteer myself for the role for at least one of the slots.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm guessing there's some way that these ordinances work that one has to kind of know. So aside from like ultimately what we want to be in the ordinance, I feel like they're normally written in some sort of way. And so if anybody else wants to volunteer to work with Devon to be on that, like figuring out what are we asking them to do, first of all, and what do we think there would be an appetite for, which would be actually ideal to have Devon on there because he can kind of feel out within the city council. We don't want to just, I mean, as much as I'd like to be idealistic and be like, oh, we would like to write an ordinance saying that city council and the city needs to like turn in one of these with every single, like, that would be lovely. But what is actually a practical first step that we think we can get traction on? And if we can always push to update the ordinance again in a year or two, but what do we think we could lift off the ground versus asking for the whole world and then nothing moving forward? So
yeah, if I can just suggest, Carla, that this actually seems like it might be well poised, not for a subcommittee, but the main committee to think about this as a whole, and what do we, particularly if we're talking about some way to devise teeth for this. I would just, I mean, I guess it could be a subcommittee, but I'd love to hear from the full committee, what it is that, we see as the ideal, and then synthesize that into an ordinance. And that's almost something I could just do, on my own. I hear if you just say what you want, and then I can kind of. Yeah.
Okay, so Matthew, what then we do is put this early on as one of the core elements of the next meeting, where we will, we'll ask folks to between now and then think about what is possible. And I'm just reminding everybody, the way the scorecard is traditionally used in, I'll say industry, but knowing that nonprofits, municipalities, etc., is that it's normally created within or for an organization, either by a consultant or a consultant working with the organization, or somebody they hired themselves who has an idea of these equity processes. It's normally created as an internal document that whatever initiative, policy change, whatever they're deciding on, as the cake is being baked, just as you normally have to put in a budget, right? You can't go off and spend money without telling people the budget and return on investment, or like what you'd be getting back from spending such money. you would have to sort of fill out one of these forms as you're baking the cake, whatever the policy change, et cetera, is. The way it's being created today, it's that a cake is being baked over there because we don't work for the city. And we, as the equity committee, would be sort of speaking to whoever is in charge leading the project, the policy change, whatever the initiative. And we would be scoring how we feel it's happening, because we don't have control over the city manager. We could decide as a group next quarter, next meeting, that we're gonna, hey, Carla, quit making us think small. I'm open to that, right? Like there's two sides to every coin. There's no one right way to do everything. Like you could say, quit making us think small. Let's ask for the whole enchilada. Fine, great. We'll discuss that as a group, no problem. But we decide whether we're writing it as us or we're asking that certain entities, whether that's the city, when I say city management office, I don't mean exactly the city management office, but the city staff all through all the departments, the permitting department, the parks and rec department, like all of that. Or we're going to stick to how it's written now, that we score it, once we're aware of the policy that needs to be evaluated. And we could talk about what those teeth could look like. So Matt, if you could put that on the calendar for a larger discussion, because it's getting late in the date now. I think Alejandro to take on this as a fuller discussion, but that'll be one of the main things we discuss next time. And then once we have the bullet points or an idea of how we want to proceed, I appreciate Devon offering his ample experience with these kind of things to kind of write it in whatever jargony way that needs to be written.
Thanks, Carla. I will be sure to have that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, folks, I think we have gone through all the agenda items. Are there any announcements or anything to share? Kate, I've actually sent messages to both Andy and Katie to make sure they exchange contact information so you all can discuss offline about serving as liaisons so that we can make sure we communicate moving forward. Make sure you do that. Thank you. Any announcements?
Yes, I have a question. So I've had a member of a council or commission somewhere else in Illinois reach out with interest about the Equity Empowerment Commission. Is there, I don't know if it's maybe, I would say it's probably not ideal or appropriate for a meeting, but if there's anyone else who would maybe like to join me in a conversation to talk about the history of the Equity Empowerment Commission and kind of explain how we came to be, and I'd love to just reach out to me and then we can figure out how we schedule that. I'd love to have some assistance, as I'm fairly new to this committee and I was not one of the lawmakers that was a part of creating it. So certainly would love to hear, maybe Alejandra, I know you're stepping off, or Carla, if either one of you are available, or anyone else. And then, sorry.
So I was going to say, I'm willing. I don't know that I provide the history piece either, right? I could talk about sort of the ongoing work or challenges or considerations, or even if I could go back in time and be part of that group, what I would do differently now, or like those kind of things to like help me better.
That'll be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I just want to note that I don't add history, but I'm happy to help.
And maybe I also meant to ask former Alderman Grover as well, so I'll reach out to her. And I think she can provide a lot of that. And then lastly, I'll just say there's a 9th Ward forum going on. So anyone who is interested in learning about the our next 9th Ward Alderman, you can tune into that and learn something new and hear a bit about the folks who are vying for the seat. So have a great night, everyone.
Thank you all. Anyone else?
I wanted to kind of just say a few words. As we know, tonight is Alejandra's last night representing us as a committee. Alejandra has, as she says, is one of the OGs. And she has been here since the very beginning. She is responsible for roping me into the job of co-chair. And has, I mean, I think it would be hard to deny the passion, the will, the strength, the dedication that Alejandra brought to this position from the very beginning, with a special passion for making sure that the city, you know, sort of lives up to its commitments around language accessibility, and making sure that, you know, it's not just a performative desire or performative statements, that it engages with the Latinx community of Evanston. And so again, I want to take this moment to say thank you to Alejandra for the many, many years of commitment, time, energy, stress, yelling, because sometimes it takes some of that to get it done or to get heard, and all the effort that you put into this committee, and we are indeed grateful.
Thank you so much, Carla. And this work is clearly not done. So thank you all for continuing this important work.
Okay, thank you again.
Inappropriate, but I'm just going to say I encourage all of you to be as brave as Alejandra has been in speaking truth to various people who are sort of impressed with their own power. And Alejandra ain't afraid of nothing. So keep that up.
I will second that. I will definitely second that.
All right, you all. Thank you for all the love. Let's see if some of us can jump on. I want to hear about my neighbors to the north in the 9th Ward. All right, you all. Thank you
Well,
all.
all the best, Alejandra. I mean, we'll see you around Evanston, etc., but still.
Of course you will. Of course you will. Thank you all so much.
Okay.
Can I get a motion to adjourn us tonight?
A motion to adjourn. I wish this meeting could last a little longer, but motion to adjourn. I
second that. All right. All those in support of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, folks, have a great night. Be safe, take care, and we'll see you in Evanston.
So long.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.